so here's what I envision. I envision that if I said to you, we got to put a fire extinguisher in every room in our house, because that's how I have to protect my house, right? So right here is an ugly red fire extinguisher. Right next door is another one. Is what you're saying is that now we have to blanket the country with Narcan to stand by waiting for a situation.
Right.
My 12-year-old in 7th grade had a training on how to use Narcan.
Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Did you ever think you'd be an expert in this area, Gregg? Other than buying and using, did you ever think you'd be an expert?
And God, let me tell you, I was not an expert in that particular realm either. I mean, talk about amateur hour. I mean, I thought I was an expert, but the more times I woke up hungover in hospital rooms or in handcuffs, I realized I wasn't such a professional, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, let's go back to that story. You getting busted with the Coke on a CD.
Yeah. Literally on the Duran Duran. Don't forget the band, the Duran Duran CD case. Yes. And it's funny. I actually saw John Taylor in a meeting. He's the guitarist for Duran Duran.
Yeah.
And I pulled him aside and I told him that story. And he's like, he puts his hand on me and goes, he's English. He goes, "Okay, mate, I'm so glad my band was part of your recovery. It was the foundation of your recovery," is what he said to me. But an expert, and I know I've told you probably more closer to you, Jason, than Flindt is. The only way I'm an expert in this field is because I've lived it. And what I mean by that is I've come to a Y in a road in 28 years of sobriety. That is, hey, I just got fired. Am I going to stay sober? Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going through a divorce. Am I going to stay sober? My child is sick and in the hospital. Am I going to stay sober? And I just really have some very fundamental things that are part of my character, right? And I hold true to those. And I realized that my problems would only get worse if I decided to get loaded or get drunk. Yeah. And I just won't cross that line in the sand.
Yeah.
And so what I think the value I bring to your audience and my clients and the people that I sponsor and teach is I bring the value of real life lessons. Mm-hmm. Flint's a little bit older than you, Jason, and I know that he probably subscribes to this, but if I was mentoring you on a steady basis, Jason, I would give you my mistakes. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I want to get you to the path of least resistance. Jason comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to start a business." Well, great. I've started several businesses. But the most things I'm going to give you is all the mistakes I made in the businesses that didn't work.
Right.
Because I want to see you succeed and give you the path of least resistance. And that holds more true in the path of recovery.
Yeah, it does, Gregg. One of the things when you were talking reminds me of, what happens if something happens to one of my kids? What happens, again, a divorce, whatever that case may be. I have a tendency to put, in any situation I walk into, put a picture in my head that literally forecast what happens. And I picture myself taking that pill, putting it in my mouth, and from there, the look on my face, the way I act, the actions, and where that's going to lead me even an hour after I take it, 3 hours after I take it, a day, whatever the case may be, especially if I ever wound up going on a run again. So it's looking at that damage with that picture in my head that just tends to work for me. Because I think all of us, well, I'm not going to speak for all of us, I'm going to speak for me. Look, there have been times over the years where I've been in a situation where it's just been shitty, and that thought comes in my head, God, I would just love to take a few right now, just to escape. But I know where that little escape is going to take me and the effect that it's going to have on everybody else as well.
Yeah. Well, and as you know, I'm going through something that is probably one of the more emotional, hard things I've had to face in life and as a parent. And I just know that there's no solution in it. So you guys know me, like I really have to step into some shit And so I'm really stepping into it. I'm stepping into my vulnerability. I'm stepping into my communicating with others, my staying connected, for the sole reason, I don't want to fail my kids, my family, you gentlemen that have been there, and so many other people that do reach out to me or I can reach out to, that I know that that's going to benefit. So there's so many wonderful things that I can see as Flindt, like you're saying, that's beyond the bottle, that's beyond the pill, beyond the snort, beyond the random girl, whatever it is, that it's just like, I have to step into that beyond it. And uncertainty for sure, but step into it regardless and hope that the good rewards come back. And as you would always tell me, just do the next right thing. Just do the fucking next right thing.
Right.
And what Flint's getting at is play the tape out.
Yeah.
Play the tape out, And I had a coaching client in here earlier, and he specifically asked me, he's like, I need you to help me on the ism. On the ism. And I said, look, look, you're going to get 3 years of sobriety at some point. Life's going good, but then some ism's going to show up.
Right.
And that could be gambling. It could be porn, sex, food, workaholism. The ism's going to show up, and that can also take your life out.
Right.
You could lose all the things that feel value to you. And what I did in the moment, and this is why I love the name of your podcast, guys, because in 2013, my wife and I were struggling in our marriage. We had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. We were forced to move out of our house. We had to go into a smaller condo. Postpartum workaholism. It was a recipe for disaster. And one day we got in a fight outside the house. And all of a sudden she just grabs the kids, puts them in the car, and drives to Beverly Hills and says, we're now officially separated.
Wow.
I woke up the next day. This was a Thursday. I woke up on a Friday, and my first thought is, Flindt, I know Jason, I'm going to go get a pair of sleeves, tattoos today, so I can show off my guns to younger women and be a program of attraction.
Yeah.
My first thought.
Yeah.
Now, Jason, this tells you how naive I'm about tattoos. No one in the history of man has ever sat in one sitting and got a pair of sleeves. It's impossible. Okay. But that's where my head went. And then the next morning I woke up, she wasn't getting back in the boat. The next morning I woke up so angry that I was like, hey, I got this 24-year-old hot Latina intern. I'm going to take her on a trip. Oh yeah, this is going to be my new, younger, hotter wife. Okay. The next morning happened to be Mother's Day. I call up my wife and I go, hey, what are we doing for Mother's Day? And like anybody who's been married and when you have a scorned wife, she simply says something like this and it hits you right in the heart. She says, it's called Mother's Day for a reason and you're not going to participate.
Oh, whoa.
So that's when I said, oh, I'm going to call my friend who charges $700 an hour, divorce attorney, and I'm going to bury this woman.
Right.
And what just showed up in the ism there, guys, in those 3 days are 3 things that are my character flaws. One is pride, right? Around, I'm going to be the cool guy with the cool arms and the tats. Lust, right? And then anger. And what happened is those all were 3 thoughts. And what I did is I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous instead.
Right. Good for you.
And that let the air out of the balloon each and every day. Right. But I give your audience that's the ism. I had 14 years of sobriety at the time.
Right.
But I was going to go act out in 3 other ways that could have destroyed my life.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50 plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt Andersen and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery. To proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
Gregg, when you talk about that has just hit me like so hard because I've been to 2 funerals in the last 2 weeks. Of young men, 29 and 31. and they both have experienced sobriety to maybe not a great length, but during the 12 years that they were using. And I look at these guys, and as I'm at those funerals and I'm listening to the parents and I'm listening to the heartache and I'm listening to everything. By the way, both sets of parents did not hide this fact at all during these funerals, that their sons were drug addicts and struggled with this, which I just give those parents a boatload of congratulatory to. But the fact is that I sit here and I'm going, those guys had no idea what the isms were. They really didn't. They could never get enough time under their belts. They could never get their feet squarely planted on the ground somewhere. And I know that happens a lot with this younger generation. Something goes south, and then they're going to go out and try to mask it and hide it, or they're doing so good, like this one young man that I've instructed his parents for so many years. And again, I'm not angry at the parents, but he jumps right back into school after 8 months of sobriety, taking 18 units, jumps right back into the restaurant business, where we know this particular place and other restaurants around are loaded with drugs. Again, not blaming anybody per se, but they jump right back into this stuff, and it's just a recipe for disaster. I just wish and pray that these younger people would just slow it down a little bit. And like you said, it's coming from, it's me, it's you, it's other people out there that have some time under our belts, that we've been there. We lived it. We know this. We're not giving you bad advice here. We're giving you fantastic advice. Please listen to it. Please listen to it. And again, you can't force anybody to listen to it, but it's a shame that these two young men had to die like that.
Yeah. And then the parents are in such grief and guilt for decades, because they try to say could have, would have, should have, what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I, and also now they're in a spin cycle until their very last days.
Right.
What I would say to your audience, especially parents out there, is really try to, I believe the parenting has to happen when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, before puberty kicks in, before they get their freshman year. Like you got to have some real core values. And I heard the other day, and I don't know if it was Gabby Bernstein or someone like that, but they're like, how important dinner is.
You bet.
How important sitting at home and having a family dinner and really downloading and checking in with each other, because, the family dynamic, especially in the morning, is like feed the dogs, walk the dogs, I'm making the lunches. I'm like this, I'm spinning dishes.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, get them out the door. And I think that just one gift I can give your audience is make time for dinner.
Right.
Make time for and be present. No phones. Everybody's looking at each other. We're exchanging information. And, I'll say this. I've also heard this amongst my younger. I think people are getting off dating apps.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a big thing on Bill Maher recently where the guy's like, hey, you go to Tinder and there's 50 men and there's 50 women, but there's only 40 good men, and all 50 women are dating the 4 good men.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So what are the other 46 doing? They're going over to Pornhub.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're going to disappear for a decade over there. And what I'm hearing from amongst my 20 and 30 somethings is that, hey, I'm going on a blind date. I'm meeting someone at a coffee shop. I'm being set up without we're going old school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that those old school values need to start coming back into the fray of America. And whether it's a dinner at home with your family, going to a coffee shop on a blind date, reading a book that's not on a tab, on an iPad, right? Like, good old paper. Right. By the way, this is a great book by one of our fellows. She's got 35 years of sobriety. Bird by
Nice.
Bird by Vermont. And And think about this, coming out of the pandemic, what most people are craving, and we're finding this out where I work at Startup Recovery, is connection.
You bet.
Connection. Mm-hmm. I want to see you. I want to look in your eyes. I want to touch you. I want us to get back to that human connection.
Right.
And I think, it's guys like us doing it in a microcosm in our families, but also in our business, in our communities, and then hoping we have the ripple effect.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting, in my era, you got your ass up at 6:30 in the morning because you could smell the eggs cooking, from the kitchen, and you sat there and you ate breakfast. And when you came home, and by the way, my mom worked too, I mean, it wasn't just a stay-at-home mom all the time. But and I remember those meals, and they were joyous. They now, again, there were times when I was pissed off and didn't want to get up early, right? But you did it because the old man's standing there going, get up. You want to eat, because she ain't making it twice for you. Yeah. That kind of deal. But I got to say this because my mom always had this famous statement. She said, "I married your father for better, for worse, and not for lunch." She said, "I'll cook breakfast, I'll cook dinner." She said, "But I'm not making lunch for anybody." She said.
I love it. But talking about connection and connectivity, which I'm glad you're seeing that because it is necessary. Yeah. My partner now, to share this, when we started dating, I went, "You've known me a long time, but these are my rules, and we're going to get to know each other. We're not going to fall to some whirlwind romance or, the stories people do. Oh, they're so attractive, and you're in the bed, and then you create a lot of false feelings. And 6 months later, you're like, I don't even like this freaking person. I don't who have I been hanging out with here?
Who are you?
Right? Because you look good in a suit or a skirt or whatever.
And Jason, meanwhile, all your friends have sat silently on their hands going, well, we can't tell them because, and then as soon as you make up with her, right? Well, we wish we could have told you, but
Greg, do you know how many of my friends have had to do that for decades?
Sure.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. But the connectivity piece, and Flindt and I have been talking about this, especially with harm reduction and long-term harm reduction with the process of recovery. I worry that prevents connectivity from ever happening because in essence, in a lot of ways, you're still trading one thing for another. And my perspective, never really getting into the situation like Greg, you've shared, Flindt, you've shared, and I've shared, where there's no masking of these feelings. You're going to have to deal with them, and you're going to have to realize that vulnerability, and hopefully a community, most of all, that you can do it in without judgment, that is there for support.
Right.
It's you hit it right on the head. I'm not so here at Startup Recovery and our other entities, we're not a MAT supportive group. We're abstinence supportive.
Right.
That's what we preach, and that's what we provide for our clients. I believe that under a doctor's supervision for a short period of time, that then goes from here to here to here to here to off. I believe that's appropriate.
Yes.
1,000%. And we certainly work with physicians here in Los Angeles and throughout the United States with those sort of core values. I'm telling you, it gets real scary when rehabs make that part of their mission statement.
Yes.
Like, come here, get on this, we'll watch you. And also, all you're doing is trading one addiction for another addiction.
Yes.
And I think the guy on the TED Talk talking about opposite of addiction is connection, he talks about that's what we do. We trade one addiction for another one. And with Matt, that's what I'm seeing happening. I've heard some horror stories here in Los Angeles where literally one of my former employees went and interviewed at another treatment center. And they said, well, tell me in a typical day what you would do. And one of the things that they told her is that you might have to, this is crazy. You might have to sit with somebody as they use.
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you.
Whoa.
She got up from the interview, went out to her car, cried, called me and said, I cannot believe that this is existing in 2023.
Unbelievable. Well, we had Boyce King on last time, and he lives in Ohio, and he was talking about all the treatment centers that are in Ohio. He said there's one on every street corner, basically, and 99% of them is preaching just that.
Yeah,
is preaching just that. And you know, Greg, where I have major issue with long-term harm reduction. By the way, I agree with you wholeheartedly on short-term harm reduction. I believe that is essential. All right. We do so much damage to our brains. We do so much damage to our bodies physically that it is going to, for some people, it is going to take just a little bit longer. All right. And I have no problem with that. None. But where I just take major issues with that, which you were just talking about, I take major issue with people that are promoting long-term harm reduction and not giving the other side of the story to the people that they're talking to. They're not talking about the heart conditions that come your way, the bowel problems that come your way, the sleep disorders that come your way, the fact that we are more apt to get fractures because of long-term addiction. I mean, the list goes on and on with this. And all they're doing is promoting one side of it. And it makes the rest of the world go see those treatment centers. All they want to do is keep people in there for long periods of time so they can bill their insurances more. I'm just, you know what? I know I'm getting pissed now.
No,
but,
get pissed. That's what this is something we're pissed about.
But I'm pissed about it, you know? And what they do is they go on to college campuses because and again, I'm going to say this, okay? They go on to college campuses because most of those students and professors on those campuses are so fucking liberal, right? That harm reduction now is part of that liberal piece. And not, by the way, not all liberals are bad people, okay? I'm not saying that.
Right.
But you know, and I'm sorry, when you're handing out fentanyl test strips so somebody can test their drugs, we're allowing them to continue to use that drug. I mean, we're not almost even saving their lives. What we're doing is we're saying you can just keep using.
Yeah.
I don't know, Greg. I've gotten to the point where I'm ready just to raise so much hell about this. I'm just ready to raise hell about it.
And Flindt, I also want, and I know you support this because you know what Ed Tiernan's been doing with Son for Charlie. You know, the fentanyl test strips also are a good thing in terms of accidental poisonings.
I agree.
Okay, and I'm a full advocate of that. But to use it in the other manner, right? To see, you follow me? That's not how, yeah. So, but that's like any good product that gets put out there. Sometimes it's used for good and sometimes it's used for bad. And
True.
You know, in terms of, so I actually have a very close family member who has been on Suboxone for, I want to say 9 years.
Okay.
And what happened was 9 years ago, his father calls me and says, hey, can you help? You know, and I certainly have the path of helping young men and women get to a year of sobriety, get their family back, get back in school, get a job that they love and feel valued at. That's kind of my forte in the recovery world. And again, his father calls, asks for my help. I lay out the plan, and then they go do a MAT program on their own. And all they did 9 years ago was take this young man off of heroin, put him on Suboxone, and he's been on a Suboxone run for 9 years.
Right.
And this is someone who really had a potential to be somebody in life, had a lot of things going for him, high IQ, Division I athlete, and really, and again, I'm no judgment, but has really settled for a ordinary life.
Right. And that's what it is. It's because we all know that these quote safe drugs, Suboxone, methadone, that people are promoting, they still have the same effects as a regular opioid. It's a depressant. It's a depressive drug to begin with. It brings you down. So you're taking you're in essence taking the same form of, it's still a narcotic is my point.
Mhm.
And it's still going to cause the things that I just talked about. Those things aren't going to go away. It in my opinion, I'm having a hard time getting this out. It has a tendency to just make us feel like we're in slow motion all the time.
Mhm.
And I don't understand. Am I wrong, Gregg?
No, but Flindt, what we just learned a 20-year lesson with opioids,
Yeah.
right? We learned that lesson. We lost so many people in the last 20 years because of opiate addiction, right? I go in for a knee surgery, right? I'm supposed to be in and out of those things in 6 weeks. And before you know it, I'm on it for 6 months, 6 years. There goes my kidneys, there goes my liver, there goes my wife, there goes my life. We just learned our lesson. So what are we doing again? We're doing the same thing over again, which, as we know, with addiction, the definition of insanity is what, gentlemen? Doing the same thing over
and over again. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I did want to say this though about the fentanyl test strips, and I'm going to bring up Julian because I can.
Okay.
All right. We got this young man who's doing amazing. Came through my treatment center. He was with us almost a full year, right? He's doing great things out in the community. He now has over a year of sobriety. And here's the perfect example of a young addict using a fentanyl test strip. He used them to bring that right up to that 2 milligram line to where he wouldn't overdose. And you know where they were using, Gregg? They were using right across the street from our office underneath the fentanyl 1 pill can kill billboard.
To give it the middle finger.
To give it the middle finger and to laugh at all of us.
And how is Julian doing now?
Fantastic. The young man is doing great. Over a year of sobriety.
Coming up on 2.
Coming up on 2. Just doing fantastic. Yeah. And by the way, abstinence.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah. No, none of that shit was going to work. None of that harm that he would have been right back out there. And that's my concern is if you have a modality where it's this, hey, it's a long-term thing and you don't tell the fucking truth, as we encourage all the side effects, not just what it's going to do to your organs, your stunted growth, oftentimes keeping you strapped to a methadone clinic because you can't travel, especially if you forget your stuff, right. So you're still kind of almost stuck in that 2-3 block radius that you possibly were when you were using. I know primarily as an alcoholic, I went to the same fucking bars. You know why? Because I tipped the bartenders good and I got half my drinks free. I was not leaving that radius.
Right.
Guess what? I've done a lot more with going and seeing things. I never would have climbed a freaking mountain when I was using. I've climbed the top of mountains now above volcanoes and done, you know what I'm saying? So it's my fear of you being strapped to it, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, never growing, spiritually, never growing, just sitting in that shit.
And I've seen a little bit of I think it was a Vice did a story on, there's a place where homeless people can go shoot up in New York.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
You know?
San Francisco too.
San Francisco, right? And what's the motivation of getting off the streets if everything's provided for you?
It's just to the point again where I honestly don't think that we are going to pull out of this thing. And so I have to look at it in terms of trying to help one person at a time, because I'm not going to give up the fight. I'm not going to get up yelling from the mountaintops about all this stuff. But I'll tell you what, they brought this fight to us. And I do believe that there are more of us that really have to stand up and just go out and try to kick some more ass.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
So Flindt and Jason, I got to ask you a question. You brought up a very good point, Flindt, and I'm not very well versed in this, so I want you to educate me. Who are they? Who's doing the puppet strings?
I think the puppet strings right now are being held by a lot by our government. I think they're also, the puppet strings are being held by people in treatment. There are people out there that are jumping on, quote, this bandwagon that think they're helping, and probably they really do think that they're helping, but they don't know enough about it. I still have to ask the question, why aren't the powers that be, Sacramento, the government, coming to more people like you and I and asking us what our take is on this? People that have lived it, that have walked it out, that have been, at least up until today, successful at recovery. I mean, look, I don't have all the letters behind my last name, but I will debate anybody on this issue, because I was the guy like you, Greg, that we did it all. Okay. We did it all out there. There's nothing out there about addiction that I didn't do. And so again, somehow there has to be some sort of, again, I'm going to go back to treatment here for a second. We all know that in treatment, there's a lot of people out there that A, don't have insurance.
Right.
B, if they have insurance, they've got some sort of government-assisted insurance that most private treatment centers don't take. So what's the only option for that person on the street? It is to go to a government-run, county-run treatment center. Now, not all county-run treatment centers are bad and evil, but I'm telling you right now, I would not put my dog in a county-run treatment center, the ones that I know about, and some of them are right here in Fresno, California.
Mm-hmm.
They become better addicts. They become better criminals coming out of the place. That treatment side of it, somehow it has to be profitable for the treatment center.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be affordable to the client, because if it's not, nobody's going to be able to help anybody here. Look, you're in the same boat, basically. I mean, we're both in the state of California with treatment centers.
Yep.
My God, you know what it takes to run a treatment center on a daily basis.
Yep.
Whoa. So again, how do we fix the treatment side of it? We can talk about awareness to the cows come home.
Yeah,
we can,
for sure.
We can talk about harm reduction to the cows come home. But until we fix the treatment side of this thing, to where again, it's affordable for the client and it's profitable for the treatment center, we're a world of shit.
Yeah, and, one of the first things I think, first thing that comes to me, and I go back to that story I told you guys earlier, is that, I want to make a phone call to somebody, and say, hey, we're going to self-police, right? Yeah. And really, like, there is no drug czar of California. There is no one way of getting someone sober. There's, and so, it goes back to just people are going to do what they're going to do because they've lost their integrity. Yeah. They've gotten greedy. The system has failed them. Right. And what's funny, Flindt, is I think a lot of these people who run these, they got sober like you and I, 90 meetings in 90 days, a buck in the basket.
Right.
And for some reason, they've decided that instead of like you and me, we're like, this is how I got sober. Why don't you try my playbook, right? They're like, oh, well, because I got sober, I got 20 years of sobriety, I can run a treatment center. But in order for me to make as much money as I can, I'm going to go down this road, even though it doesn't align properly with how I got sober. Yeah. And I will say this to the very end. If you look at the most successful treatment centers, sober livings, IOPs, whoever is running them and their values are being used up and down the company to get their clients sober, they have the most success.
Mm-hmm.
Because the founder, the CEO, the partner, the leader, very much like Steve Jobs or Richard Branson, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are a program of attraction.
Right.
They are a program of attraction. And when the owner is shady, the program is shady.
You bet.
100%.
Yeah. And I think to answer when you say the they, I hate to sound like Jesse Ventura, but follow the money, pal. I think it is. It's if we're not, if I think that they is where the incentives go. And I think that's what it is. And unless we shift the incentives a different direction and realize that, hey, your sympathy approach to this homeless person is like, oh, they're homeless and what a miserable life. And all they got is to get high, as opposed to, how about you look that person, that human in the eye and go, it doesn't have to be this way, and show them some empathy. I think we could shift it, but we'd have to shift the incentives because there's people in government and law enforcement and, like Flindt and you were saying, in treatment facilities to make it sustainable, that it just is a process. This is where the money flows. And I'm willing to bet the same people that has come to light that produced all the different opioids that killed tens, hundreds of thousands of people are probably producing your Suboxone and your methadone as well now.
Sure.
And so they've been able to shift their business model from one thing to another. And I'm willing to bet those people still have lobbyists that are going in and they're talking to the decision makers that don't talk to people like you and Flindt, or even someone, granted it's, 2 years continual sobriety now, just over, but 7 years of experience in personal recovery. They're not talking to us. Right. Because we're not coming there, greasing their pockets. That's my perspective of who they are.
Great perspective.
And when you even look at following the money,
sure.
And this isn't, let's just take Narcan, for example. We've got a 4 milligram Narcan on the market. Narcan is still being sold at pharmacies instead of being given away like our organization gives it away and other organizations give it away. There's a new one out there called Cladaxo, which is an 8 milligram Narcan. So now here comes another pharmaceutical company that's making the 8 milligram that's going to make millions. What are we going to do? Just keep going? Are we going to have a 12? Are we going to have a 16? Are we going to have a 20? Is it going to keep going? So now you've got 4 or 5 pharmaceutical companies that are selling their product out on the market. And what that message says is, we're fucked. That message is telling everybody we got to keep making this because nobody's going to get clean. And that's the other thing. We've got treatment people out there and individuals sending that message that you need to be on long-term harm reduction because you'll never be able to get clean. And that's bullshit, Greg.
The image you painted for me was what I thought, like, with all those Narcan, all the times. So here's what I envision. I envision that if I said to you, we got to put a fire extinguisher in every room in our house, because that's how I have to protect my house, right? So right here is an ugly red fire extinguisher. Right next door is another one. Is what you're saying is that now we have to blanket the country with Narcan to stand by waiting for a situation.
Right. My
12-year-old in 7th grade had a training on how to use Narcan. Now, my school is very progressive, and they're on it, and a lot of it has to do with, I'm whispering to the principal all the time, like, hey, we want to be out in front of this. So, they kind of got a captain kind of pushing along these ideas. But what I do like is that my 12-year-old daughter, if she's standing in a Starbucks and someone goes down, she knows what to do, which I think is fantastic.
Me too.
But I don't want the ugliness of a red fire hydrant in every room in my house.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I look, years ago, Jason knows this, years ago, I was back in, I want to say 2004 14, something like that. I was at the National Drug Conference in Atlanta, and there was a breakout session on Narcan. Should it be sold to the general public or just still kept with first responders? And there was a group of ladies there. And this, of course, this is before the fentanyl crisis even hit. And there was a huge discussion on it. And I went up to these ladies and I said, again, ladies, with all due respect, does your son live with you? Yes. Do you pay for his cell phone? Yes. Do you pay for his insurance? Yes. Do you pay for his car? Yes. Blah, 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 on and on and on. Does he work? No. And you allow him to use heroin in your house? Yes. I said, can I move in? And they're looking at me like,
you just gave me the heebie-jeebies. You just gave me like I just got this
right. And so I look at this lady and I said, can I move in? And she's looking at me like, what are you talking about? I said, you are providing all this for him. I said, plus you're allowing him to use heroin in your house. You have other children in the house. And now there's Narcan there in case he overdoses. I said, why would he ever want to get clean? I said, you are sending such a wrong message here. So again, but now my tune has changed. I believe Narcan needs to be in the schools. It needs to be in offices. It needs to be in a car. It does. Okay. No question. But again, how we're taking that and now we're exploiting that.
Flindt, did you realize you said you're not against Narcan and never were in reality? You're just against shitty parenting.
That's it.
Amen. And again, we literally could talk about parenting till we're blue in the face. I mean, it's all there. That it's parenting.
Right.
It's education. It's parenting. It's coaching. It's grabbing our kids. Summer camps. What friends they're going over to. What?
Sure.
I saw this thing on Instagram the other day, and this guy says, "Look, it's not going to be what teacher. It's not going to be a coach." It's going to be another parent putting their 2 cents on your kid while she's over there on an overnight.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh my God, I got to start interviewing the parents.
Yeah.
Damn near.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. No, I make sure that I have contact with parents and get to know them. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I let them know what my lifestyle is. I've been, my youngest, a friend, and I was blunt. This is what I do. This is why I do it. Any questions, concerns, hey, please reach out anytime. But hey, you know what? I guarantee you in my home, there's no alcohol and there's no drugs, and that's never going to be an issue.
I called up a very beautiful, smart friend of mine, Dr. Rebecca Udall here in Los Angeles, and she's a child therapist. And I said, hey, I got some situations going on with my daughter, and it's revolving other parents and other kids. And what was great was that we have access to smart people. And she literally gave me the script. Here's what you say to the kid. Here's what you say to the kid's parents. Mm-hmm. And guess what? If you end up being the difficult parent, that parent will say, let's not hang out with the champions anymore. Mm-hmm. And you're right, Jason. I put down some boundaries for this woman, and suddenly our phone stopped ringing. My kids stopped hanging out with her. And I just owe that wisdom to people who are much smarter than me in the realm that I'm trying to work in. Right. I think we all know this as recovering addicts. And I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Right. At one time I thought I was, and I ended up in a jail cell. Right. Now in that room, I actually am the smartest guy. But what we've all learned, the smartest guy in the room surrounds himself with the smartest people.
Yes.
That's what we need to do.
Right.
Right. And so I do think, and Flindt and Jason, we're all three of us are parents. It all comes down to parenting.
It does.
Core values, show them, don't tell them.
Right.
Right. Get to their eye level. Like last night, my daughter came home from soccer and she just seemed a little off. And so I sat with her, but she was standing and I was below her versus me talking down.
Yes.
I was, hey, I'm on the same level as you. Is anything going on? She's like, no, just we played soccer in the wind and rain. It kind of wore me out. I'm tired. And she kind of explained herself. I said, okay, good. Wait. But I think long-term, she will like that at some point that her dad sat her down at 12 for a 37-second, not commercial, 37-second talk. I'm going back to my old video production days about just like, do you have an off day?
Right.
So, I think this country is going through a lot of pain,
Yeah.
Lots.
a lot politically,
Yep.
sociology wise. I think we're going through growing pains.
Yep.
And like if you look at this, and I'm not to get political here, but our choices for the most prestigious job in the country, President of the United States, right, are not the best.
No,
Like,
they're not.
Right? Think about that. They're not the best. And why would you take that job?
That was going to be my follow-up is why would anybody want that job?
Yeah.
But here's something, Greg, that talk about the political side of this. And I can't remember, it was just a couple or maybe even 3 years ago when we've got it on video, when Newsom stood up in front of God and country and said the biggest mistake the United States ever made was thinking that we could all become clean and sober. Was that the...
It was along those lines. And he said, he was talking about kind of the homeless situation, how it is in California, LA, San Francisco primarily. And then he went, I get it. I get home. Boy, I got to self-medicate when I watch the evening news.
I saw that clip probably 6 weeks ago for the first time. And I was just like,
right. I mean, so again, top down, when you've got leaders that are doing that, I mean, and look, and most of these young kids today, they're watching that, they're seeing that. Yeah. So they're thinking, hey man, you know what, guess what? If our governor's saying it, what do I care?
Well, heck, and then there was a follow-up video, a transient man that he was talking, he goes, I'm just an alcoholic, but they were trying to give me all these other different things along the harm reduction line. He's like, I just don't want to drink booze. I used to have a good job. That's all I want help with.
Right.
So it's kind of, again, it's kind of back to where was the money? Where's the incentives? Where's it going? Because
I think we need more moments like Sunday when I was watching ESPN Sports Center and Chris Kirk won the trip. And he says in his speech, I owe everything in my life to my sobriety.
Yes.
And I hope there's a bunch of 13-year-old, 14-year-old boys and girls watching that going, Mom, Dad, what's sobriety?
Mm-hmm.
My 10-year-old says, she knows I've been sober a long time. She goes, Papa, I want to be sober 100 years. She's already got 10.
You're 10th of the way there.
I love that. Yeah. Can you believe that with Chris Kirk? I mean, I'm watching it. I'm watching it live. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, bam, I'm posting that thing all over the place because and he did it with such grace. He did it with such humility. There was no showboat about that at all. It was just beautifully done.
And most of all, Flindt, he did it with those clear, sober eyes. We know he's speaking the truth. I literally, his skin is clean.
Right.
His eyes are clear. And he didn't build it up. It was just something he slipped in and said, here it is.
Here it is. I know it. I just
and how many golfers or pro athletes or just high performers, actors, businessmen or whatever have we seen that are the opposite of that?
Oh, I can't tell you how many.
I mean, just numerous ones. Like
I was watching
study.
the Golden Globe Awards. Oh. And it looked like a newcomers meeting. It looked like that first day one in the rec room for group assessment, right, Flindt?
That's beautiful. That's perfect.
But I think that, and I love that because I think the more people that we do get that are in the public eye that are saying it, the more sober curiosity it can build for people. Mm-hmm. It's just like the why. I had a friend actually my childhood crush, ironically, but went through it with her ex-husband, and I believe he is in long-term treatment now. But she was like, after talking to you, I started reading books of women who transitioned away from the mommy's wine club and everything else. Like, why? I'm in my 40s. This doesn't feel good.
Right.
Like, why am I doing this? Because it's what everybody else is doing to try to loosen up around people. Well, maybe I got something inside me I got to take a look at to just,
and I know you guys have had some very powerful women on your podcast over the past few years. And have you addressed that? Like, why do women in their 40s and 50s still continue and chase that party that either they missed out on or reminisce about from high school and college years? Because it looks like the same party. It's just now they're wearing Fendi and Chanel,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and they're drinking better wine versus Bartles and James, if I'm correct. But have you ever got an answer? Because again, I haven't been able to ask that question to that, but I certainly see in my ecosystem, you know, what is why do they keep doing that every Sunday or every, you know, like what is it, guys? Help me educate.
I got a theory. I have a theory. When we look back and we watched like Andy Griffin, Mayberry, right? Aunt B looked like an aunt, right? She looked like she was a wise woman, elderly, you know, she was elderly. She wasn't unkempt or ugly or any of those things, but she looked like
the
someone
same
with
look was
wisdom.
Alice, the house cleaner in the Brady Bunch.
Right.
I think we've moved so much to a youth fetish of trying to be younger, to be youthful,
Be their daughters.
be their daughters. I mean, I know single moms. It's like, my daughter is my best friend. What the fuck is wrong with you? She's 15. She is not your best friend.
Right.
She's not even yet to your peer point.
Right.
Give it another 10, 11, 12 years. Potentially, if they're out there doing it, not like what Flindt was talking about, living in your house, still paying all their bills and cell phone. And you know what I'm saying? I think we've moved so much away from younger people wanting to talk with gentlemen with wisdom like yourself, women with wisdom, to the people that could and should be wise, wanting to be more like the young people. Using, you know, I mean, gosh, the vocal fry. Oh my God, you know, like just this thing, like
that commercial.
Yeah,
I love that commercial.
like, oh my God, like
so spot on.
Yeah, let's not try to be the Kardashians. No offense. I've talked with Caitlyn. She told me it was a fucking show. Okay, let's not try to be this. Let's not try to have this life. This is a fake thing you're seeing that you think is reality. Stop it. Seek some damn wisdom. That is my perspective. There's too much of a youth fetish.
Yeah, you know, I went to a high school football game this past year, and it was homecoming, and I'm kind of wandering around the back a little bit, and I'm looking at these mothers getting their daughters ready to go out onto the field. First of all, the outfits that these young daughters had on were so unbelievably revealing, but the moms were dressed just like the daughters.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that thing going, okay, look, I mean, I know I'm old and people are going to say you're out of touch and you're out of this. And I'm going, no, there's something not right here with this.
Yeah.
Just, you know, when the mothers, I remember talking to a grammar school one time, and their parents, this is years ago. And there were these three mothers in the back. And as I'm talking, that, you know, they're the perfect Jennifer Aniston wannabes when she was on Friends, right? This is who these mothers were trying to look like. And the entire time I'm speaking, I'm thinking to myself, moms, yours are the kids that are going to be walking through my door here in about the next 7 years.
Yeah. So I think the vicarity has just flipped to the wrong stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with being attractive physically as you grow. Women, men, yeah. But the vicarity, and you tell me, Greg, and I see it with my kids, like when my youngest produces some amazing art or has this amazing natural knack for piano that I don't have. Like, I'm a terrible musician. I've been trying to play bass for 20 years. I still suck. That's the vicarity, not their attractiveness and how popular they are, but their actual content of character. And I think that's gone away. I think it's shifted too much to this outwardly stuff. And yeah, that's my perspective.
And Flindt, like you said, on the dad side of things, we know you have to be a provider. We know you work hard Monday through Friday, but you can't spend 5 hours on a golf course on a Saturday and miss your kid's soccer game. You know,
exactly.
Like, because here's why: you go do that, you're gonna have a spot on my couch over here. I'm not you, but your son's gonna have a spot on my couch over here. Your daughter is,
right?
And so and I just want to say like, parenting is the most rewarding and most difficult job possible. And it's not made for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I have a little saying, and I know Jason's heard me say this, is that, I've had bad bosses and I've had good bosses, and I've learned more from the bad bosses because I learned what not to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing is true with parents.
Right. Yeah.
How I was raised, I had bad parenting and I had good parenting. And I learned more from the bad parenting, because what happened is I will never do that when I'm a father.
Right.
I hold a firm wall of that was a generation ago, and this generation is going to do it this way.
Right. Right. You said something very important, because you hit a nerve with me when it came to golf. No, and you're right. You're totally right. Look, I'm 67. I want to spend 5 hours on a golf course now. I can. My sons are 42 and 37. But even in my using days, I did not spend that 5 hours on a golf course every Saturday. I just
still amaze me that you were the baseball coach and
all of that. I mean, I was a wild baseball coach. It happened to throw shares at the parents one time.
Go rent the original Bad News Bears. And that was Flindt.
I know it well.
That was me. Yeah.
Walter Matthau was the best.
He was the best.
And by the way, that movie still holds up, by the way.
It does. It does.
It totally holds up.
Yeah. And it's just, I think it's a wonderful thing to the reminder of as any kind of mentorship, not to have your ego out front, because sometimes you miss the lesson that's coming back to you,
Sure. Sure.
And I love that movie. Gosh, I haven't thought of that.
I haven't either. Thank you. I got to go watch that tonight, because I forgot all about the Bad News Bears. Yeah, the only thing Matthau didn't do like I did is I literally threw a folding chair at a parent one time, and so that didn't work out well for me.
Was that before Bobby Knight or after Bobby Knight?
That was right after Bobby Knight.
Okay, so you learned from one of your peers.
I did. I definitely.
Then he started chewing on the towel as well. Gosh, now I'm thinking of the Odd Couple where what is this? It's Linguini, throws it off the light. Now it's garbage. So many young people are like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. We're doing this for us three. If three of us have a good time, that's all we give a shit about.
That's exactly right.
Mr. Andersen, anything else you want to throw here towards Mr. Champion?
Greg, thanks, man. It's always great to see you. It really is. I just I consider you a friend. I consider you just a great guy in this entire industry. Keep doing what you're doing, man. God, I love what you do. I don't have anything else to say other than.
And Jason, I won't say anything. I just want you to say my standard line regarding people. What's my standard line regarding the three of us?
Good people know good people.
That's it. Amen.
Amen. And I love coming on your show. I love seeing your guys post. Would like to see you guys more in person if that's ever available, in terms of just drop in on us in LA,
It is.
And, I just want to give a little shout out. We're opening up Startup Wellness down here in Los Angeles. And it's a new way of doing an IOP. It is clinical therapy meets Eastern medicine meets biohacking.
Oh.
And so our people are going down there and they're getting the clinical, but they're also getting acupuncture and breath work, sound bath, cupping. And we're also giving them red light therapy, somadomes, and biocharging opportunities. And so we feel we're in a year's time, we'll have enough data on the back end to say, hey, this person's anxiety went down. Mm-hmm. This person's cravings went down. And then what I hope is that new IOP that's no longer relapse prevention groups, right?
Right.
That it becomes maybe the standard for people, because again, everybody, I believe that, recovery is kind of like a coffee table. You lay out everything, but you got to grab a couple tools, put them in your tool belt, but no one's tool belt's the same.
Right. Right.
So I just want to give a little shout out, and I'm always grateful to you guys, and thank you. It's always informative, knowledgeable. We do it with humility. We do it with comedy. A lot of pop culture references that no one gets except for the writers of Family Guy, right?
Yeah.
But I love you both. And I love that you guys are good men and good fathers. It's real important that I align myself with that type of person, because that's what I hope I am.
You got it, Greg. Thank you, my friend.
Likewise,
You,
and
man.
I do want to give a nice reference here, because one of your breathworks coaches, Sonny Mayo, personal friend who I have done breathwork with, and talk about a guy that wakes with anxiety and does just these 10-minute practices in the morning. Folks, I'm telling you, it works. I know, because I've done it, and your guy, Sonny Mayo, has taken me through
Every
it.
Tuesday night down here at Startup Wellness. Yep. Sunny.
Perfect.
So, and again, it goes back to good people know good people.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.